Of all the post-Imperial warlords, all those who kind of tried to claim the heirship of the Empire, probably the most successful in terms of territory and military strength was Warlord Zsinj. No first name, no last name. He was just known solely as Zinj. Zinj is interesting for a number of reasons. Unlike kind of some of the other warlords, he attempted more to make his own kind of government and do his own thing. He adopted interesting new designs such as the TIE Raptor, which also had missile launchers and shields, kind of a better version of it. He also founded his own equivalent of the Imperial Guard in the Raptors. Actually, you know what's funny? That picture is directly taken from the Star Wars Atlas, which I have open in front of me. But yeah, so he formed the Raptors, which were kind of a combination of Imperial Guard and Stormtroopers who were loyal solely to him. The idea being to create a completely new group of special forces that didn't have previous loyalties from the prior incarnations of the Empire. So, as normal, we're going to read out Zinj's biography from... This one is actually from the Essential Guide to Warfare, not from the Star Wars Atlas. This is kind of the other one that was issued that they took a lot from to use in Wikipedia, which deals with kind of the same thing, but it's also a timeline, and it also has biographies of a lot of different figures such as Isard and Zinj. So, War Portrait Zinj. The son of a shipyard mechanic from Fondor, Fondor being a major shipyard. Zinj was dismissed by his instructors and peers as a dull sort. His most notable trait was he had no first name, following an ancient tradition from his Fondorian class. In fact, Zinj was a gifted linguist, mathematician, and businessman, as well as a skilled tactician and engineer. Hyper-intelligent, eccentric, and often bored, he adopted various unlikely personas over the course of his career, thus confusing potential rivals and keeping himself entertained. Claiming that he wanted to be a great warrior, Zinj accepted command of a Victory Star Destroyer in Quail Sector. Few other officers saw glory in hemming an old cruiser on a mapping patrol, but Zinj proved effective on mission after mission, rising to become Grand Moff of the Quail Oversector, High Admiral of Crimson Command, and one of the few select officers to earn the ceremonial rank Warlord of the Empire. So that is actually where the term Warlord comes from within the Star Wars universe. It was an honorary title Palpatine granted to his most loyal and most competent military and civil leaders, which didn't convey formal power. Much like Grand Admiral, it meant that you outranked all other civil and military officials within the Empire. So I'm just going to read a little bit more about his background because it's kind of interesting. So his mother was a noted starship captain who had her own Venator. And when the Empire was established and it became more and more male-centric, she was relegated to secondary duties and was asked to give up her Venator Star Destroyer for retaliation, it was called, for decommission. Her son volunteered to take command of the vessel and bring it back to port. This was not meant to be, however, as Madame Zinj refused her orders from Naval Command and instead publicly denounced the Empire as corrupt and turned to privacy. The ace of the space lanes was now an enemy of the Empire, and to hunt her down, the Empire turned to the one who knew her best, her son. The younger Zinj was granted command of the Victory 1 class Star Destroyer Iron Fist, which was one of the oldest ships of its class, and was itself due to retirement, to hunt down and destroy the Retaliation and Madame Zinj. Young Zinj waged a ferocious and ultimately successful campaign, killing his own mother. His mother was stripped of her title and expunged from Imperial records, and Zinj was granted the title Warlord of the Empire as kind of a thank you for, and kind of a sign of just how loyal he was. He had killed his own mother in service to Emperor Palpatine, as well as having demonstrated considerable competence over his career, so he was kind of viewed as a safe choice to be given such an exalted rank. So around this time, Zinj was assigned to patrol the area in Quail Sector around the planet Dathomir. So, for those of you who aren't aware, Dathomir is something that looms very large in Star Wars lore because it's the home of the Night Sisters. Now, there's a couple different types of the Night Sisters. One of them is Dathomiris, who are like half Zabrak, half human, and then there are some who are just pure human. It's focused on a lot in Star Wars The Clone Wars, it's the planet where Darth Maul comes from, as well as Asajj Ventress. It's also the focus of the book The Courtship of Princess Leia. So the Night Sisters are Darksiders, known as witches, and they can use Darkside powers, which they call spells. So, because Dathomir was in the middle of nowhere, the Empire built a prison complex there, where they'd put dissidents, intellectuals, and scientists that were too important to kill off. However, Palpatine and Zinj kind of realized the mistake, but because there was a prison facility down there were ships down there, and the Dathomiri witches could take a ship, get off planet, and start wreaking havoc in Palpatine's empire. Well, obviously, being Palpatine, no one was a match for him. A sizable number of witches would be able to do considerable damage and maybe make it to Coruscant and give him a bit of trouble. So Zinj blew up the prison from orbit and destroyed every space-worthy craft. While this did strand all Imperial personnel on the planet, it also stranded the Night Sisters. So as a result, Palpatine confirmed his title of Warlord, promoted him to Admiral, and gave him command of the Executor-class Star Destroyer, Brawl. So Zinj continued to rise up in the Imperial ranks, adding Grand Moff to his titles. He was assigned to conquer a semi-independent area of the galaxy with the Drakmarians. To this end, he was given Crimson Command. Crimson Command, which is Pterodac's command actually, was a group of Victory 2 Star Destroyers that had been substantially updated. The idea being to create a sizable fleet of very powerful and flexible secondary smaller ships, which was kind of an interesting idea. So Zinj's fleet was the single largest within the Imperial Navy, as it was one of the few areas the Empire was actively at war. And so as you can see, you have a man of immense power. He's a Grand Moff, a High Admiral, he has a Super Star Destroyer, and he holds the title of Warlord, which theoretically allows him to outrank everybody within the Empire. So after the Empire's defeat, the Empire began to fracture, with some parts going under the Imperial Ruling Council, some staying loyal to... Zinj didn't immediately declare his independence or anything, learning from the message of his mother. He instead secured his oversector and began to put neighboring oversectors and neighboring sectors under his controls, claiming he was protecting them from the rebellion. The Imperial Ruling Council wanted to depose him, but they had bigger things to determine, and he hadn't been actively disloyal, just kind of taking a lot of initiative, I suppose you could say. He renamed the Brawl, which is a lame name, to the Iron Fist, which is awesome and lame. And Zinj continued kind of his efforts to solidify and build his own rival empire instead of just having it as a series of planets dominated solely through force. My understanding is some degree of civilian governorship did exist within Zinj's empire. He also sent emissaries to the Alliance, to the New Republic, then the Rebel Alliance, and offered them a ceasefire, which they more or less took, as he wanted to focus on defeating other warlords and building his own empire up, rather than fighting the New Republic, who really, they weren't even in the same part of space at that time. There was no real reason for the two of them to waste resources on one another. While Zinj would have a number of battles with Truden Pterodac, his former subordinate, the Greater Muldrude, he had a kind of a peaceable foreign policy towards the Citric Hegemony, the Loyalist Empire, and the Pentastar Alignment. Zinj's capital during this period was the planet of Serrano, notably where Count Dooku was from, although his military headquarters was on Dathomir, or rather, he had a huge a series of shipyards built around Dathomir. The moons proved to be rich in resources, and Zinj successfully concentrated his shipbuilding efforts there. What followed was a variety of different schemes he came up with. Zinj, like I said, had a genius-level intellect. He had all kinds of scams against the Republic. Particularly after Isar died, he managed to pick up most of Imperial intelligence and a lot of the better Imperial officers. And he did things like he tried to plant false data on their computers. He tried to have his infiltrators get important information to outwit them, etc. He tried to commit economic warfare against them. At one point, he found out that Kuat Drive Yards was almost finished building another superstar destroyer known as the Razor's Kiss, and he attempted to capture it only to be foiled by Han Solo and Rogue Squadron. I think it was Wrath Squadron during this time period, but they succeeded in blowing up the Razor's Kiss. Kuat itself would fall a couple of years later and was the last major Imperial shipyard, other than Bilbrigi, not under the Republic's control. In the aftermath of the Kuat battle, Kuat, like I said, would not fall for a couple of years yet. Han Solo was given command of a massive New Republic task force with the express goal of going and tracking down the Zinj's headquarters and defeating him once and for all. He almost managed to destroy Zinj's flagship. However, Zinj had some 4D chess plan where he used a partially completed Super Star Destroyer, like as a fake Super Star Destroyer, and it got blown up instead. The incident resulted in Han Solo famously telling Zinj to kiss my Wookiee, to which Zinj swore for a full minute afterwards. So a bunch of different battles happened, and the whole situation had kind of drawn to a standstill, with the New Republic unable to find and defeat Zinj, with Zinj lacking the resources to really take on the New Republic. And you kind of had an interesting scenario here where the Empire and the New Republic briefly joined forces. Not necessarily joined forces, but they kind of had an unofficial ceasefire until Zinj was dealt with. And the two were kind of fighting side by side to try to take him down. Around this time period, as Han Solo came back from his... Oh, by the way, Zinj also destroyed New Alderaan. The Alderaanians had been given a new planet with a secret planet whose coordinates weren't widely known. By using his intelligence, Zinj was able to find it, and he went there and blew it up and killed most of the remaining Alderaanian refugees. So, Han Solo went back to Coruscant to find that Leia was going to marry Princess Isidore, whatever his name is, of the Happen Consortium, which is kind of the largest of the independent states within the Star Wars universe, other than maybe the Hutt Cartel, if you want to consider that a independent state. They have a large fleet of a ship called a Battle Dragon. The Battle Dragons are kind of interesting because the Battle Dragons, rather than... They have kind of like a rotating disc at the top so that they can constantly fire. It's kind of like a chain gun. Same basic principle. The disc rotates, and as the turbo lasers rotate, they recharge and is always firing. So while their accuracy is not particularly good, they can direct immense amounts of firepower against one target. So the Battle of Dathomir winds up happening because Han Solo succeeds in winning the planet of Dathomir from a warlord in a card game. He takes it alone on the Millennium Falcon and manages to win a planet, which he's going to give to Leia to be New Alderaan. However, this winds up not really working out, as it turns out the Night Sisters are there, and that Zinj is using it as his secret headquarters. It's suggested that the warlord that he won it from in the card game allowed him, specifically offered that planet as kind of a tip-off to the New Republic, where Zinj's headquarters was. So Han Solo, with support of the Happen fleet, succeeded in destroying the Iron Fist and killing Zinj, which Han Solo did personally, firing concussion missiles into the bridge and yelling, "Kiss my Wookiee," once again. With their leader lost and his Super Star Destroyer crashing into the planet, Super Star Destroyers seem to be completely and utterly worthless within the Star Wars universe, Zinj's empire collapsed and didn't last another year. There was no clear successor, and it fell apart into various little pieces, some of which were absorbed by Pterodok and the other warlords, some of which with his death, his empire collapsed. Like I said, Pterodok attempted to seize territory, but now the Republic could focus on him, and the Loyalist Empire, some of the pirates from Zinj's command, and the New Republic succeeded in beating Pterodok and forcing him to flee into the deep core, although it's suggested some of his mid-rim holdings managed to hold out. So pretty much in one battle, the New Republic had destroyed the largest remaining opponent against them. The Empire, still fragmented, with only nominal control from the Imperial ruling council, meant that the New Republic, more or less at this point in time, thought that they had won the Galactic Civil War, and that all was left was to mop up the various Imperial factions. Something that they would soon realize is a mistake, as Grand Admiral Thrawn would return from the unknown regions. So Zinj was known to speak in a number of different languages. General Han Solo, I guess as a joke, suggested he could speak 60, but he was a polyglot. He wore a white uniform of a Grand Admiral, despite not being a Grand Admiral. He would continuously, deliberately do buffoonish or dumb stuff. He had a genius-level intellect. A lot of the aspects of his personality he invented to try to prevent people from getting an accurate picture of him and being able to psychoanalyze him. He was really the only one of the warlords who had any real chance of restoring the Empire. Although whether or not he would have restored the Empire, created a completely different state, etc., is unknown. His complete lack of a plan of succession meant that, as with Palpatine, there was really no hope that what he created would survive his death. In fact, the Empire never really developed a succession plan until the Fel dynasty came to power, and it just became primogeniture, which is the most successful succession system in human history, or I guess in this case in galactic history. So let's kind of close this out by talking about the taking of Kuat. So the taking of Kuat, Kuat? I never know how to pronounce it. But anyways, the New Republic had another kind of one of these 4D chess plans in which to go back. So Kuat Drive Yards is the largest manufacturer of starships in the galaxy. At least I think it is. The Corellian Engineering Corporation might build more, but nobody builds bigger ones. Some products that you might be familiar with that come from Kuat Drive Yards include the Imperial Star Destroyer, the Victory-class Star Destroyer, the Venator Star Destroyer, and the Executor-class Star Dreadnought. So they built most of the Empire's warships, and as I said before, it was pretty much the most important planet left under Imperial control. Arguably even more important than Coruscant, as they could build Executors, and I don't think any other shipyard, other than maybe Briggy, could build Executor class. Although Harsk was able to build Bellator class, but those are much smaller. Anyways, I'm getting off topic. So they had a 4D chess plan where they bought up most of the shares, or a whole bunch of shares in Kuat Drive Yards. The Commerce Minister of the New Republic succeeded in buying 34% of Kuat Drive Yards because it's a company. The shares were very easy to buy because Kuat had been nationalized de facto under the Empire and hadn't really been issuing dividends or any of that kind of thing. So they were able to buy it up for pennies on the credit. So as part of their 4D chess plan, they also managed to implant a series of astrometric droids infected by a virus, which shut down the Kuat Drive Yards Starfleet, its defense fleet. So the Minister of the Interior went down to the surface and negotiated with the board members, and he convinced 3 other board members that held another 14% in the company to vote with him to surrender to the New Republic. And no one actually wound up dying during the taking of Kuat Drive Yards. The New Republic was able to take the largest shipyard in the galaxy, as well as a number of Star Destroyers and battle cruisers. So kind of after this point, the Empire was viewed as a spent force. The New Republic would begin to launch a series of offensives all across the galaxy, taking more and more territory. As there was really no more organized opposition, the Imperial ruling council at this point in time, well, they couldn't really build more dreadnoughts, and their production capacity was very low, and they had lost a lot of ships just from the various battles against Zinj, etc. They continued to get pushed further and further back towards, I think they were only controlled about a quarter of the galaxy by the time Thrawn would reemerge. The New Republic also allowed any system that wanted to join the Republic to join the Republic, and it swelled, being able to occupy the vast majority of what had previously been the Empire. The New Republic seemed ascendant, and it appeared that the defeat of the rest of the Empire would only be a matter of time. However, Thrawn was about to arrive from the unknown regions and prove them very wrong in that preposition.